Hi, it's Jamie. We're going to be talking about We Are the Storm. We Are the Storm is a project by Libs Elliott, and it looks like this. So, on the face of it, it might look a little overwhelming, and what I hope to do by sharing this video is how I broke down this project and made it a little easier to digest and work through. As you can see, it's made of blacks, grays, blues, and whites, and that isn't really my jam necessarily. So I decided to go with a different Libs Elliott collection, and that was her Phosphor. So these are the original 24 colors. She's come out with more since. So these are the 24 colors that originally came out. And you may be wondering why my stack looks like this. So if I turn this into black and white, you can see that my gradient does go from lighter to darker. And you might not necessarily have thought that, like I sure didn't think that with like these colors in here, like this orange and the blue being more of the meat. Like these ones are pretty obvious being the lighter ones, but anyway, it's a pretty good gradient. And that's how I broke up the fabrics in here. So as I said, there are 14 fabrics, and my fabrics are broken down into having they are broken down into 14, but as I said, I have 1A, 1B, and that goes all the way through until I get to 11. So the last four are the ones that are just by themselves, so the darkest ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no A or B of these, they're just by themselves. But it can, it poses interesting because this is 10B and this blue one is 10A. So there's a lot of variety that you can play around with when you're adding more fabrics to a project. And how do I keep them all straight? I wrote the numbers on the selvages. And also when I am basting or putting a hexagon together, I label them on the back so I know who's who according to my coloring sheet. So one thing that I really like about these patterns is it comes with a coloring chart typically. So they usually look like this. I don't know how much I should show for like pattern copyright. So if you'd like to see more, I'm happy to share. This is my coloring chart. It has gotten a little, I have a different copy of it, but this is mine. So the nice thing about the coloring chart is it does break down or I guess this is the assembly chart, technically. So I worked with the assembly chart more so than the coloring chart. For me, since I'm using 2 fabrics for each number, pretty much, I have in some spots where you can see I have written like a 2A in there. That's just so I know what I'm doing to keep my thing straight. One of the first things that I did when I started this pattern is I went through the assembly sheet and I broke down what every row needed. So as you can see, this is a little bit of the assembly sheet, and it tells you this is the fabric that you'd be using, but then you can see the shapes that you would need. And essentially what I did is I made an Excel sheet that tells me how many of each shape to cut in each fabric for each row. I know this is a lot. This is how I kind of needed to break it down for myself. So this is my breakdown of row 1. So you can see here these are the shapes that I need, and then this top row is the fabric color. And so like this one for row 1 tells me that I need an equilateral triangle, a large triangle, a single curve hex, and a small triangle in fabric 1A. Because what I do is I would take my fabric 1A, which is this, and then I would cut out all the pieces that I need from that fabric, and then I would see what I need for 2A, or sorry, 1B, 2A, 2B, etc., and go down through my list. And then so I cut for one row at a time, and then I baste for one row at a time. And then I have this bin from a big box craft store, and it's perfect because it has a bunch of little bins in it. And the little bins, you can see I'm working on block 3 of row 4, so there's little tape here, number 3. And the nice thing about this little bin is I'm almost done this block, so I have the block, and then hopefully nobody falls out here, but I have the threads for that block, some sew tights and scissors, and all my little things. So if I'm just working on this, all I really need for, say, a guild meeting or whatever is I can just take this little bin, and then I take my coloring sheet so I know where the pieces fit, essentially. One of the things that I did when looking through the assembly chart is I also divided all the paper pieces into their rows. So this is my baggie for row 5, and it has all of the paper pieces for that row in there because I cut a row at a time. So as you can see, there's all the little triangles and things. And I have split them into, there are 17 rows. So I have 17 baggies filled with their rows. And after I have cut all my fabric and basted all of my shapes for the row, I will then refer back to my coloring sheet to assemble each hexagon to make sure that I didn't miss a piece or miscut. Because one thing with this pattern is there are these little triangles. It doesn't tell you if you need to cut them this way or this way. So I have a little baggie that I've started of miscuts or just extras, like if I have through the coloring process, because I basically just did it randomly. So if I have a miscut of like these two because they were supposed to be going the other way, I can always use these in future rows. So I definitely keep these around. So that's what this baggie is. And then I have the baggie for the papers that I've taken out already because I am on row 4. So I chose to match my thread for this one. You really don't have to, especially if you're doing more of the original colors. I would probably just do a neutral gray with that one. With this one, I have a lot of contrast in here. So even in this block, you can see I have the dark blue and the yellow. So on this seam, I've done the yellow stitching. I prefer to go lighter when it is high contrast. Some people prefer to go darker. I'm not too sure what color I would use on this one if I was just using one color. I mean, I suppose you could go somewhere in the lighter realm. Something in the mediums could be good. You can buy templates for this project as well. They are in sort of the neon electric green color. They are also good for fussy cutting because they are translucent or transparent. I have the grippy spray on mine, so it makes them a little bit more translucent. I use my little 18mm Olfa cutting with these. I just find it saves a lot of time when I am cutting at a row and doing a row. I personally wouldn't suggest cutting your entire quilt at one time, just because one, that takes a lot of time. Two, you might hate the project because you're tired of cutting, or you're tired of basting, or you're tired of sewing all at one thing. So I also find that breaking it up into stages. So like I said, I will cut a row, baste it, and then put it in its little bins, and then it's ready, and work on a square at a time. This is what it looks like so far. As you can see, it's pretty psychedelic. So this is 3, and then I've started attaching row 4 on this side here. So all the papers are out here. And as I mentioned in my English paper piecing video, I prefer to take the papers out as I go, because when I'm attaching this next row on, I can scrunch all this fabric in and really get to where I need for the seam that I'm working on to make it easier to hang on to when I'm attaching. So basically what I've been doing is I initially started with row 1, of course, and then I believe I did row 2 in entirety. So it's just one long strip of hexagons, and then I attach the whole row. But now what I've started doing is I will just attach a hexagon as I've finished it. So the next one that's in here, this might be upside down or whatever, but it'll go down in here. So yeah, it's quite an intensive project. But when you break it down into smaller pieces, it is much more manageable. This project finishes at 62 by 63. So it's not big, but it's not small either. This project falls into one of those ones with the old adage of you can't eat an elephant in one bite. So just little pieces at a time. I have row 4 all ready to go in the little bins, and maybe I'll start doing a check-in once a month to see my progress. As I said, I haven't worked on this one in a little bit of time, and maybe I'll try to do a row a month. So that's how I've organized and broken down a big project like this. If you have a way that you like to do it, I'd love to hear about it. If you have any questions or you want to see more about this project, please ask. Happy to share. And until next time, happy sewing.